So hey everyone, this is Uncle Jim, and I'm going to try and teach you the no fuss, no mess way of making homemade fresh bread. Everybody loves bread, including myself, and it's really quite simple. What you really need a good mixer, blender, like this KitchenAid here. Let it do the work for you, and you'll have fresh bread in no time. So let's get started. I got a third cup of sugar, about a teaspoon of salt, 3 tablespoons of butter, nothing like butter, and I've already got my water heated. So I got a cup of hot water, and you really need that to kind of melt the sugar, the butter. And one thing I like to do too, when I'm making bread, I like to season it sometimes. So I've got several marinades here. I make like an oregano marinade or like a rosemary marinade. It's just fresh herbs with some garlic. And what I like to do is I like to store my fresh garlic in containers with some canola oil. And then once it starts to get old, I'll take the old garlic, make my marinades, and then put fresh garlic with the fresh oil in it. And that's what I use to season. Hell, you could season your bread. I cook with it all the time, and it works great. Now, the butter's almost melted. So now what I'm going to do, I need 3/4 of a cup of ice water. And an egg. Take your little whip, beat the egg. Now what this does, your yeast likes a nice warm, moist environment to grow. So because I had to put boiling water in here to melt the butter, it's way too hot. I think yeast will die at like 126 or something like that. So I'm going to cool this down. Mix all that in there. Okay. Yep, perfect. Okay. So now it's just warm enough for the yeast. So, because I make bread all the time for myself, and there's nothing like it, I go to BJ's and I buy myself, industrial size. But if you're making bread, one of these packets will work. And I've tried this many different times. And about 2.5 of these should be good enough. So, I'm going to take my yeast. 2.5. Okay. So, now, stir that up. So I'm going to leave my whisk in the bowl, and I'll explain why later. So I will see you in about 20 minutes. Okay, so you can see the yeast has risen quite a bit, and the reason why we leave the whip in the bowl, see what it looks like? You really want to blend it in with the rest of the liquid so it's evenly spread throughout. So the yeast is ready, and we're going to start adding the flour. Now, I like to keep mine in containers because living in the South, there's just bugs everywhere. So anyway, it keeps it safe, it keeps it dry. Another thing I like to do, I like to add, to make it a little healthier, I like to add a little bit of flaxseed meal and toasted wheat germ. So I keep that in the freezer, and so now I need 5.5 cups of flour, And I'm going to add a half a cup of the flaxseed meal toasted wheat germ combination. So that means I need another 5 cups of flour. And what I've discovered through the years making the bread, if I just make it with all bread flour, it seems a little too tough for me, so to tenderize it a little bit or make it a little softer or flakier, I like to add regular all-purpose flour. So I'm going to add, as you can see, I'm not too careful about measuring. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so about 2 cups all-purpose flour, and then the rest of it will be bread flour. Okay. Now, what makes this no fuss is you're going to let the mixer do all the work for you. So we're going to start on low. We're going to let it start to mix. And I'm going to set my timer for about maybe 15 minutes, and I'm just going to let the mixer work the dough. So it's mixing it up. Let's speed it up a little bit. Now the thing you got to remember, if you live in, say, a humid climate, you may need to add a little more flour. If you live in a drier climate, you'll need to add a little less. Okay, so here we are, we're working the dough, and as you can see, it's going pretty well. And again, give it about 10-15 minutes. Now, you want the dough to be a little sticky. If it's not, then you know it's a little too dry, then you need to add a little bit of water. But it's actually looking pretty good. Now, if you find that the dough starts working its way up the dough hook, I just speed it up a little bit, and it kind of pushes it back down. Just keep your eye on it, but I'll let it work. I'll let the machine work for about another 10 minutes, and we'll be back. See you then. So we're done. Like I said, let the mixer do all the work for you. It makes it so much easier. So, and as you can see, this is really the only mess I've made, this in the bowl. So now what I'm going to do, if you live in a climate where it's cold, yeast, again, likes a nice, warm, moist environment. So what I usually like to do in the winter time, that's when I make most of my bread, I'll warm the oven for a few minutes, shut it off, and then open the door. And then I'll stick a pan of hot boiling water in there to keep it moist. That's what a lot of these facilities do when they make bread. They call them proofers. They create this nice, warm, moist environment for the bread, and it really, really rises well in that type of environment. So I've got my dough, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray the top of it to keep it moist because I don't want it to crust over on me. So I'm going to spray it, I'm going to wrap it, leave it in the bowl, stick it in the oven, put my timer on for about 30 minutes. And what I've discovered, and I read this somewhere, it said the more you let your bread rise, the more tender the bread. And I've found that to be true, so I usually, I'll stick it in the oven for, like I said, 30 minutes, bring it out, beat it back, cover it again, let it sit there for another 30 minutes, and then I'll let it rise a third time in the pan when I'm either making loaves or rolls or whatever I decide to do with it. So I let it rise 3 times, and I find that it really does make the bread better. So I'm going to go ahead and cover this, stick it in the oven, and we'll be back a half hour. Cover the top of it. Wrap it up. My nice warm oven, and again, 30 minutes in a warm oven, nice moist warm oven, and we're good. Okay, so as you can see, I got my boiling water. I've got the bread rising in the warm oven, and about 20 minutes or so, I'll set the timer. I'll come back and see what happens. See you then. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes, and this off. So as you can see, we got bread. So let's see. Put it back. Just gonna punch it back. Cover it back up again. And give it another 20 minutes in the oven. Okay, so here we are again. Second rising, as you can see, risen quite a bit. So, I'm trying to get it out of here. There we go. Now, that's starting to soak. So as you can see, now normally when you're making bread, the old-fashioned days, the way they would work the dough, so to speak, would be to twist it, fold, press, turn. So, you twist, fold, press, turn, twist, so on, so on. You get the idea. So, that's how you would normally knead the dough. Okay, so now we're going to work the dough, and I'm just going to make rolls. And you can get these anywhere too. They're just bench scrapers. So now this part's kind of fun. You might want to get your kids involved. They might have fun doing it. So I just like to make knots because they're easy, and you don't have to be too exact with any of it. Let's see, so 4. The good thing about this too, again, you don't have to be exact. Some people like a bigger roll, some people like a smaller roll. It's really up to you. Maybe you want to make a whole bunch of small ones. Alright, so just cut. I try to get them as even as I can, but whatever. Like I said, it doesn't really matter. So, I'm just going to take it, roll out your dough, make a simple knot. There you go. Now the thing is, while you're doing this, you got to be kind of quick, because the dough is still rising while you're doing this. So, and as you can see, I got quite a few here to do, so I want to try and get it done as quick as I can. Okay, so now I got all my rolls. Spray my pan. Just place them on here any old way. Again, you don't have to be too fussy with this. And as you can see, I got all different sizes. Now you can take your dough, cut it in half, and use half and just stick it in a loaf pan, or okay, one extra here, that's alright. Okay, so here we go. Just give them a little bit of space here. Now again, I'm going to stick them in the oven, let them rise for about 20 minutes. I'm going to spray the tops. Again, just so they don't dry out too quickly and form a crust. I don't quite want that yet. So these are ready to go. Stick them in the oven, let them rise, and then bake them off. So it's been about 20 minutes, and as you can see, they've risen quite well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the oven on and get them started. See you in a bit. So while I'm waiting for the rolls to rise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a spread to coat the rolls when they come out of the oven. So again, I'm going to use some of my garlic oil here, just a couple tablespoons. I'm going to add some butter. Everything tastes better with butter, right? So some butter. Make it a little extra tasty. And then I'm going to melt that, and I'm going to add some Parmesan cheese and a little bit of parsley for some flavor. And I just go to the local hardware store and buy these cheap 50-cent brushes. They work great for this kind of stuff. You don't need to go to no cooking specialty store. There's no need of that. These work just fine. Just make sure you wash them first before you use them. So I'll go ahead and make the spread, and I will see you in a bit. Okay, so here we are. Boy, these smell good. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put my Parmesan garlic cheese spread. And another thing I like about making these rolls, they get all these great nooks and crannies that capture all of this. And oh my God. I wish you could smell this. And I think some of the restaurants, local restaurants, do this with some of their rolls too. But as you can see, the cheese and the butter and the garlic gets trapped on these little nooks and crannies and just tastes so good. And you really don't need anything else with them. They're just delicious on their own. Just a little more. And as you can see, there's all different sizes, and these are great for making sandwiches once they cool off. There we go, for the kids especially. And again, as you can see, you know, they're all different sizes, and to each his own. Me personally, I love a nice big roll with dinner. Of course, I probably shouldn't, but what the hell. Okay, so now doesn't that look good? There. So, yeah, get it all. Now I'm going to try and put these on a rack and let them cool. Alright. So, the first one. There we go. Now the nice thing about this, just like, I'm going to take a cloth, wipe off the pan. And if you have pans that you bake with, don't get them wet, because they're just going to rust on you. So, there we go, nice and clean. Hold that. So, there you have it. Oh my God, these smell so good. Hope to see you soon. Enjoy.